Hi, I'm AJ Hogue, and welcome to the first secret or the first rule for excellent English speaking. Now, this whole video course is going to teach you a very, very different way of learning English. And if you follow every one of these secrets or rules, I promise you, your English speaking will improve tremendously, a lot. You will make big improvements, and I also promise you, you will enjoy learning English better, you'll enjoy speaking it more, you'll feel more confident. All of these things will happen. So let's get started. What is secret number one? Well, secret number one is always study and learn phrases, not individual words. All right, so what's a phrase? A phrase is simply a group of words. Doesn't need to be a full sentence, although that's fine, but it's a group of words, more than one word. That's a phrase. So this is a very, very simple rule, simple secret, but extremely powerful. In fact, this is one of the keys to learning and mastering English grammar when you speak. And it's much better than studying grammar textbooks. Okay, so in your traditional English classes, schools, and books, in your normal book classes that you took before, the normal books that you used before, how did you learn? Well, when you learned vocabulary, you had long vocabulary lists, right? Usually at the back of the chapter, there's a list, and you see the word, and then maybe a translation of the meaning in your own language. And you just studied these lists of words and memorized them, tried to memorize them for tests. And then probably you forgot most of them. That's what usually happens. So, this is a very painful and boring method, right? I mean, nobody likes studying lists of vocabulary words. Good news for you. Stop doing it. It doesn't work. You don't need to do it anymore. So, what you do need to do is focus on natural, real English phrases. When you do this, you get free grammar. Let me give you a very simple example. So simple. John hates ice cream. Now, of course, to hate means to dislike, to not like something very strongly. So John hates ice cream. Let's imagine that hate is a new word for you. Now, in the normal, traditional way of learning, you would find to hate, that version of the verb, in the back of the chapter or in the chapter of your book. And you'd write it down, to hate. It means to not like something. And then you would study that version of the verb, right? To hate, to hate, to hate. And then later, you would learn all these complicated rules about how to change that verb in different situations. Right? I hate. He hates with an S. And then you would learn the past tense and the future and all this stuff. And you'd have to remember the basic form of the verb, to hate. And then you would have to remember how to change it. That's the old way of doing it. And it's painful and it's boring and it doesn't work. Because it causes you to be thinking too much when you should be speaking easily and automatically. When you learn a phrase, you just write down the phrase. So first of all, you get your phrase from some natural English, not a textbook. And then you write down, John hates ice cream. You write down the full phrase always. You never write down just one word. You never just write down the dictionary form of the word. You would not write down to hate. You would write down, John hates ice cream. And you might put a note to remind you where that phrase comes from. So you might put, it comes from a story that you read, or it comes from something you heard in a movie, whatever it is. It reminds you of the real situation that it came from. Now, when you just study this phrase, John hates ice cream, you never study just one word, you're studying the phrase, you're automatically getting grammar. You don't need to know about singular or plural or, anything like that. You just will learn naturally by learning phrases like this that you always say, he hates, she hates, John hates, Mary hates. It will become natural. See, this is how native speakers learn grammar. This is how I learned English grammar myself as a child. We don't study grammar rules, and we certainly don't study vocabulary lists. But what we do learn from our parents and from other people is we just hear natural phrases all the time. So for me, I naturally feel deeply that if I say John, that I'm always going to put an S on there, John hates, because I've heard phrases like that so many times. I feel the grammar, I don't need to think about it. And I feel it because I learned phrases, not individual words, not grammar rules, not from textbooks. This is so simple, but it's very powerful if you use it correctly, but you must do it all the time. So never study a single English word again. Always, 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 when you learn something new, write down the full phrase, even the full sentence. Super important. This is very powerful, but very simple. Now, here's the easy way to do it. Go get yourself a small notebook, a phrase notebook. Just a little notebook that you carry around with you all the time. Carry it in your jacket, put it in your backpack. And then anytime you find a new word in English, maybe something you're reading, something you're listening to, doesn't matter. You're just going to write it down in your phrase notebook, but you're going to write the whole phrase. So if hate was a new word for you, you would not just write down that word hate, you would write down the full phrase, John hates ice cream. Or John hates, up to you. But you're always going to write down at least 3 or 4 words that go with that vocabulary. Very, very important. And then when you learn new words, you just keep adding to it. Then in the future, when you review, when you're studying, when you're reviewing your vocabulary, you always review the full phrases. Always, always, always. You never study the individual word. You always, always, always review and study full phrases. By doing this, you're going to learn, number 1, how to use vocabulary naturally and correctly. You see, sometimes we use certain words in certain situations. There might be another word that means the same thing, but we don't use it in that situation. How do you know that? There are no rules about that. The only way you know that is by studying phrases. Phrases that you get from real English. And by real English, I mean not textbooks. Another thing, again, you get free grammar with this. There's gonna be so much grammar in those phrases, you don't need to think about it. It's just going to be there naturally. If it's a natural, real, correct phrase, the verbs are going to be correct. The possessives will be there when they need to be. The correct prepositions will be in there. You don't need to think about it. Oh, when do I use on and when do I use, in? When do I use at? You don't need to think about that. Just learn phrases. Eventually, you start getting more and more of these phrases. There's a lot of repetition, and you'll start to get a feeling for how these things work in English, how the grammar works, how the prepositions work. When do you use certain vocabulary? When do you not? It happens automatically, unconsciously, meaning you don't need to think about it all the time. It just feels automatic. This is the way children learn grammar and vocabulary, and it's the way you must also if you want to speak English easily, automatically, effortlessly. So that's it. Very, very simple. Our rule number 1, our secret number 1 is always learn and study phrases, never individual words. All right, this is just secret number 1. We've got 7 of them. When you put them all together, you're going to have a completely new way of learning English. You will get fantastic results. Just follow these secrets. So secret number 1, always learn phrases, never ever study individual words. See you tomorrow for secret number 2. Bye-bye.